In the summer and fall of 2005, my grandparents had moved into a tiny mobile home park kind of in between two small towns. At the end of the road they live on is a shopping center, and it was still being built, and at the time, there was only a Target. And keep in mind, because it is truly where the story begins. Being as I stayed at my grandparents' home quite often, think 3 to 5 days a week, and it was the only store out there that we were there quite frequently. No specific employees ever stood out to us, nor do I remember ever seeing, let's call him Alvin, there. Within a few months, a Save Mart. If you're not in California, it's just a basic grocery store. It was added to the shopping center, now making 2 stores in total. And naturally, since Save Mart has cheaper groceries than Target, we began to shop there instead. This is where Alvin made himself known, whether he intended to or not. Now, I can't tell you how many times we would go down random aisles and this dude would just show up. At first, he would act like he was just restocking the shelves or cleaning, but eventually he would just stand there and stare at me. And he would do this in every aisle that we went to. Then, as we would leave, he would refuse to let anyone else bag our groceries for us, and he would still bag the groceries and follow us to our car, even if we refused the help. This went on for months, until just as quickly as he made himself known, he quickly disappeared, or at least we thought. As time went on, things were quiet, and I eventually started seeing Alvin again around Save Mart, but he no longer did that weird stuff like before. Around 2009-2010, I got into more of the internet and social media, and I became quite into a site called My Yearbook, and it was actually quite popular on there, and I would get multiple friend requests a day. So when I got a request from a guy named Alvin, given that I never knew this guy's name, no alarm bells went off. I would exchange phone numbers sometimes and meet people from my yearbook, and eventually I began texting with Alvin. For over a year we texted and nothing more, but we were able to have a good flow of conversation and talked about life. I found out that he worked at Save Mart and tried to figure out which one. There's a few in my hometown, so that maybe one day when I was out running around, I could stop off and say hi or something. But he kept refusing, so I let it go. Eventually, New Year's Eve 2010 rolled around, and I was having a party with my best friend, her brothers, and a few of our other friends, and I invited Alvin. He tried to say that he worked late and didn't know if he could make it, but I was determined to get him over to the party. I talked him into showing up, and when he did, I instantly regretted it. My best friend and her brothers, let's call them Leo, Randy, and RJ, knew all about this guy and how weird he had been. And when he showed up, and I realized who he was, I did my best to just enjoy the party without interacting with him too much. My friend's brother, who I kinda had a thing for, stayed right with me, but so did Alvin. And the whole night, no matter how many times my friends tried to interact with him and get him away, he wouldn't even budge. He wouldn't speak to them or even acknowledge them. He literally just stood there and stared at me the whole time. And besides saying hello when he came in, he said not one other word to even me. It came down to midnight and we did the countdown where Randy and I made a big show about kissing, and all that thinking that it would throw him off. It didn't. He stared even when that happened. And finally, Leah and RJ came up with a plan to pretend that all of us were going to bed now, and then told him that he needed to leave. Luckily, he did that. And then again, just like that before, he seemed to disappear. Around November, I had gotten and lost my first job, which afforded me to buy a car. And Grandma and I were still shopping at Save Mart, but Alvin wasn't bothering us really, except for again occasionally seeing him around the store, where he would speak to my grandma but not to me. This particular day though, he hadn't followed us at all, and I thought us leaving would go over without any appearance from him. But I was wrong. He came over and began bagging our stuff, even though we would say no, and then began not only following us to the car again, talking to only my grandma about how I needed to apply at Target, because when they had first opened he had worked there, and if I put him on my application as a reference I would get the job. And of course I had seen through his manipulation tactic, but my grandma unfortunately not so much. She kept going on and on about how I should do it, so I explained to her everything that had happened, and not only did it shut her up, but she took my side. Long story short, I applied without his reference and got the job, but I had to turn it down for a better opportunity. He began following me around the store again, and I a few times would say hi just to let him know that I knew that he was there. And eventually he did ask me to hang out, under the guise of it being a group hangout with him and some of his coworkers. It was all a lie. When I showed up, which was my biggest mistake, but I was a bored 20-year-old, and my boyfriend at the time had encouraged me to go because he wanted me to make more friends. But it was just him. I sat at a table in the donut shop for around 20 minutes before I made an excuse and I left. He asked to hang out about a month later, and since he had stopped following me around the store and acted semi-normal the last time, I agreed. We met at Starbucks, and around 9:30 they closed, and I walked to my car thinking cool that I can go home now. But nope, he decided to invite me to his house. I said no, but he also said that his mom had made homemade cookies and stuff there and he wanted to meet me. So I thought fine, I'll go get a cookie and then I'll leave. Bro, he told his parents and siblings that I was his girlfriend. The whole time I kept correcting them and telling them that no, I already had a boyfriend and Alvin was and not him, but they just kept ignoring it. So I panicked and hid in the bathroom on the phone, with my then boyfriend trying to figure out how to get out of there. My boyfriend said to say there was an emergency and leave and then come straight to his house. I did just that, and all night, Alvin wouldn't stop texting me and tagging me in random Facebook posts about love and relationships. I blocked him on all the socials that I had back then and turned my phone off and went to bed thinking never again. He began not only following me around the store, but if I was out anywhere, he would show up there. Like one day, I was getting snacks and an energy drink at a convenience store and he came in. His excuse: "I saw your car outside and I wanted to come say hi to you." And that wasn't the first or only time that he did that. Finally, my boyfriend and my boyfriend's dad threatened him to make him leave me alone, to which he sent a long text about how me not being with him was a mistake, because he was apparently a children's pastor, rich, and he owned his own house. He again disappeared at Save Mart, at least for me. When my grandma and grandpa would go in without me, he would relentlessly hound them about how he had a large bank account and how his parents bought a house for him, and that they needed to make me break up with my boyfriend and be with him. When my grandpa exploded on him one day about leaving me alone, he then started on about, "Well, she has a sister, doesn't she? She was a minor at the time. I could date her." At this point is where both my grandparents filed complaints against him to these supervisors, and where they learned that they weren't the first. Multiple employees had either complained about harassment or left the job completely because of him. Luckily, this led to him getting fired, and I haven't seen him since. Last that I heard through the grapevine, he had knocked up one of those girls in his youth group and he married her. For context, my mom at the time was working 40 to 50 hours a week, so while on vacation from school, I was responsible for watching my younger sister. I was a high school junior at this time and I had babysitting experience, so I decided why not. I didn't get paid to watch my little sister, but she was a relatively good kid, so it wouldn't be a hassle. Before my mom went to work, she gave me the normal rules and told me to make sure that I keep an eye on my little sister. I shrugged her off and sat on the couch to watch some television. My little sister raced down the stairs 15 minutes later and asked me if she could go next door to collect some old dolls that our neighbor had promised her. It was a sweet old lady who was about 65, and had grandkids in, about me and my sister's age. I told her yes and to be back in 5 minutes, to which she put on her sandals to retrieve the dolls. At this time, my little sister had a habit of leaving the door open. I didn't mind most of the time because it was hot, and we lived in a safe, public neighborhood. There was slim to no crime in our neighborhood, and everyone knew everyone else. That being said, if you do something bad, your parents will know about it within the hour. I know you're reading this and thinking how dumb it is to leave the door open, but like I said, we lived in a public place. While my sister was next door, I decided to use the restroom. Now, we have 2 bathrooms, 1 half bathroom downstairs for guests and 1 full bathroom upstairs. While I was in the bathroom downstairs, I could hear my sister slamming the door closed and walking up the stairs to her room. I finished up, flushed, and washed my hands, and then sat back on the couch to watch TV. Curious to what my sister got, I called her name. No answer, just a muffled rustling of toys. I decided to leave her alone and turn my attention back to the TV. I was so into the show that I was watching that I didn't notice my little sister standing across from me. It didn't click for me that I hadn't heard her come downstairs. I just stared at her, annoyed that she kept staring at me. I paused the TV and asked her what she had wanted. She looked at me wide-eyed and told me that someone was upstairs. I laughed at her and told her that that wasn't funny. She was still visibly scared. I thought she was joking, honestly. I asked her if she had came back home a few minutes ago, and she said that she hadn't. She said that the door was closed and pointed to the disregarded box of dolls by the back door. I walked into the kitchen, called my dad to come over, and grabbed a big knife from the kitchen drawer. Walking back into the living room, I told my little sister to go into the bathroom and lock the door behind her. I told her not to open it until I told her that Mom was home so she would know that it's me. I crept up the stairs and peeked into each room until I got to my little sister's door. It was cracked open and toys and clothing were now littered her normally organized room. I didn't wait. I kicked open the door and flicked on the light, and my blood turned cold. In my little sister's rocking chair sat a little old woman rocking back and forth with a plastic baby doll. I stepped further into the room and demanded that she get the heck out of my house. I wasn't raised to curse at adults, but this was a strange woman in my little sister's room. She stopped rocking and started to hum the tune to a baby lullaby. The most terrifying part wasn't that she was pretending that the baby was real. It was the unnatural smile stretched across her wrinkled face. She stood up and giggled on the way out and down the stairs. I stood there staring at her room, trying to see if anything was missing. I didn't even notice that she took the doll with her. I walked back downstairs and checked the room before letting my little sister know that she could come out after I unlocked the doors. By then, my dad was pulling up in the driveway up front, and I told him what had just happened. He walked around and checked the rooms like I had. While he was upstairs, my little sister told me the old lady knew where she had been and tried to get her to come with her. The creepiest part was what my sister had told me. She sounded like she was attempting to sound like me, but when she didn't say, "Mom's home," she stepped away from the door. I don't know who that was that walked into my house to steal my little sister's doll, but I never want to find out. So, I work late a lot, and tonight, as I was coming around the corner from where I get off my train stop, a guy making a turn across the intersection hollered out at me. I made the mistake of saying hello back to him, because what can I say, I'm a nice person and it's just my natural instinct. I knew that I messed up bad when I saw that he started making a U-turn. So I quickly crossed the street, hoping that since he would be on the other side that I would lose him, since it's a really busy main street. But I didn't. He made another U-turn at the next light, and pulled up directly beside me, and I screamed at him to leave me alone and started walking even more quickly, but not running yet because I didn't want him to see where I was going to turn to walk into my neighborhood. Some freaking how he managed to make another super illegal and dangerous U-turn in the road to end up directly beside me right at the entrance to my block. And luckily he got caught at a red light, because I realized then just how sketchy this was and how much danger I could possibly be in. So I started sprinting as fast as I could, just hoping and praying that I could make it to my house and to safety before that signal turned green and he was after me again. Thank God there were some guys outside of the apartment complex, kitty corner to my street, because when they saw me running and I told them that someone was following me, they stepped up to the sidewalk and started looking down where he was turning from right at that moment, scaring him into pulling into a parking lot adjacent to where I was heading, instead of still following me into a not much darker and less populated area. I made it inside and started crying, and not a minute later I see headlights that pass my front windows, and I look out and it's the same car on my exact street, driving right past my house. He must have pulled through the parking lot and proceeded into the same direction that I was, obviously going from the opposite way, hoping to catch me before I made it back home. I'm in tears. No one that I live with is validating how serious and scary this was. I live in a major city. The street that he followed me on for the majority of this time is incredibly busy and well lit. Bars everywhere. It's Friday night. He didn't care. He could tell that I was a young woman alone at night and headed home, and he planned on following me all the way there, and then he followed through with that plan. I may have made it home, but he drove on my street. He drove by my house. I don't know when I will feel safe again. And the worst part is that I have to work this late every day. This is not okay. This world is not safe. I didn't deserve this. Now I get to live in fear and he gets to know where I live. None of this is fair. Guy in the dark gray Toyota, I hope the next time you make an illegal U-turn, you hit a street light and total your car. I don't know what I'm going to do if we ever meet again. This was in 2017. I'm by no means super attractive, and in my personal opinion, I'm not the best. I had recently gotten on Facebook so that I could talk to my family, and I would even talk to some of my friends, and sometimes my family's friends would also add me. Now, my brother Mark lives with his dad in Oklahoma, and I have both of them added. One day, I get an advertisement from somebody named Rose Laurent. I was confused, but I figured that it was a friend of Mark's dad. Her occupation was self-employed at a pharmacy in their town, so I accepted it and I received a message almost immediately. Hey cutie. Now, I was very naive at the time, but this was still a big red flag. This woman was like, what, 2022? So I was like, okay, must be a creep. And in my naive stupidity thought, let's mess with her. So I strike up a conversation. I play along and she prompts me with questions. She continued asking and I continued playing along, until she asked me if I was alone. I didn't understand why this mattered and I answered her truthfully. I was alone up in my room. My family was outside, but I didn't think that was important. She responded with an okay. And then I get a video call. I was confused and I declined it. I warned them not to try it again, and they did. I said some long thing about how messed up they were and I blocked them. I went downstairs and I told my mom about it. It turns out that I was nearly taken advantage of. They were calling to try to get my location. They asked if I was alone to see if they could kidnap me without any witnesses. I unblocked them, but they had deleted the account. So I did some research. The pharmacy they had listed didn't exist. I then looked into her name. Perfume. Her name was a freaking perfume brand.